Okay, I have 5 recommendations for, wait, this is 5, right? Yeah, I have 5 recommendations for your summer reading list, and I tried to pick books that weren't like really obvious, because obviously I could say things like Hot Milk by Deborah Levy, but I feel like most of us have read that and loved it. But yes, 5 books, and I feel like we've got a little bit of range. Okay, I am filming this whilst it is completely overcast and raining outside. I am in a jumper and drinking hot tea, but the books are giving us summer vibes, I promise you. Let's see, what will we do first? Okay, I'm gonna go with the most obvious one first. This is one of my favorite books, Second Place by Rachel Cusk. This was my first Cusk. I feel like it set the bar incredibly high. I feel like I could have obviously gone for outline because like that's like super summery. She's teaching at a summer school. But for me, this is just like a perfect summer read. So if you are someone who is looking for a book that deals with themes like art and artists, women trying their best to embody all of their roles as themselves, as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, as an artist, as a writer, looking at the theme of mother-daughter relationships, also the idea that only male artists really become genius and women don't really seem to be afforded that title. I love this book so much. There's a scene towards the end that's just like etched into my brain. But yes, so we have our main protagonist, and she's an unnamed narrator, which I feel is quite typical of Cusk, and her husband have a second place out kind of in the countryside, and our protagonist has the idea of inviting artists to stay at their second place, to kind of do like a residency where they can just like work on their art whilst they're there, and the protagonist and her husband kind of host them. So there is an artist that our protagonist is obsessed with, and she writes to him asking him if he would like to stay at her second place, and he accepts, and he brings along his young new girlfriend with him, and drama kind of ensues. And then at the same time we have the protagonist's daughter coming to stay with her, is it fiance or husband? I can't quite remember, but he suddenly decides that he wants to be a writer, and yeah, it's just really good. There's a lot of clashing personalities, a lot of fraught dynamics. There's a really beautiful moment where the protagonist and her daughter are out on the lake during the day, and Rachel Cusk really kind of muses on motherhood and the relationship between the two, and it's just a really beautiful scene. And also I feel like the title speaks to the actual location where the artist stays, which is the protagonist's second place, but also kind of hints at looking at how women are often seen as second place next to men, especially in, you know, the home, in the arts. And yeah, I love this book so much, and I feel like it has such a strong opening. I once told you, Jeffers, about the time I met the devil on a train leaving Paris, and about how after that meeting the devil that usually lies undisturbed beneath the surface of things rose up and disgorged itself over every part of life. And that is just a hint of what's to come. There's something underneath the surface, and you feel tension building and building and building, and then there is a scene that involves a lot of painting, and it feels very manic and just completely unhinged, and that's very, very good. So this book is for my people who want like an arty, very literary kind of read this summer. I would recommend Second Place. Next up, this is for the people who want a gothic summer. So this is Sisters by Daisy Johnson, and I read this a couple years ago as well when it first came out, and I really loved it. It has echoes of Shirley Jackson for me. And okay, the premise is we have a mother who has two daughters, July and September, and she takes them to a fresh start. They move house, and in true kind of gothic fashion, the house becomes a character of its own. The environment in which they're in really starts to make things feel like the line is blurred between dreams and reality, awake and asleep, and the heat is very hot. And the sisters, when I was reading it, I just imagined that they were twins. Like, I feel like they're twins even though they're not, and I kind of wish that they were, because it would almost make more sense to me if they were twins. So this book kind of looks at sibling love and sibling rivalry, and how, especially I feel like between girls who are very close in age, if they're sisters, there's like this almost like obsessive love you have for your sister, but they know all the worst parts of you, and you bare your soul to them, and so they know all your sore spots, and they know how to really hurt you, but they also know how to love and care for you like nobody else. And there's like a bond that is so deep and so kind of, it's almost like unexplainable to people. And I really do feel that with my sister. Like, I have a twin sister, and our bond is just, it cannot be put into words. And so when I was reading this, I don't know whether it's because I am a sister who has a very deep bond with her sister, but just their relationship is so interesting, and how in sibling dynamics, when there tends to be a dominant sibling and then one that follows, and how is that dynamic made? Like, is it because there's two distinct personality types? Like, what's going on there? So these two girls follow their mum to a fresh start. They move into a new house, and it's over summer break, and yeah, things aren't what they seem. And I really love this. I think I read it in one afternoon. It was so good. So if you want a dark gothic summer, then I would recommend Sisters by Daisy Johnson. Okay, next I'm gonna do another literary fiction. This is one of my, I said this about Second Place, but again, this is one of my favorite books. I read it 2 summers ago, I think, probably just after I read Second Place. A good summer of reading. So this is Paul by Daisy Lafarge, and this is for, again, if you want an artsy summer. So we have Frances, our protagonist, and she is trying to find herself after a breakup in, I think it's London, and she goes to rural France, and is the most gorgeous descriptive writing of like summer in France, in the countryside. And Daisy Lafarge's writing is really good at like just like observational moments, like really creating the scene. Like, you feel like it is so easy to envision everything. Like, I really felt like I was in it. And Frances, I felt like, was such a believable protagonist. She's not perfect, and she's not completely like unlikable. She's kind of in the middle place where she just feels really real. And I believe all the decisions she's making. I believe all the thoughts that she's having about other people and herself, and I believe all of her feelings. So she's had this breakup, she goes to France, she's trying to find herself, and she is going to work on a farm. And there's like this enigmatic, charismatic leader of the group at the farm, and he just comes across like such a cult leader. He, for me, was just completely like untrustworthy from the get-go, and it really explores the power dynamics between the relationship that Paul, the leader, has with Frances. And I think this might be based on Gauguin, the painter, because Paul is an anthropologist, and he is kind of, you know, leading these people on the farm to like live this beautiful life, but is also wanting to write a book, and is studying, and is going on these trips. And the more that Frances gets to know him, the more about his past comes out and who he truly is. Yeah, this was just beautifully written, really interesting, and yeah, I'm kind of over the 20-something young woman trying to find herself when it comes to reading, but this is an exception to that rule because this is such a brilliant book. We had 2 daisies in a row, that's nice. Next up, I felt like I wanted to recommend a classic because, I don't know, it's summer, maybe you have a little bit more time on your hands and you want to sink your teeth into something a little bit chunkier, and maybe you want to, you know, spend the time that you have going for something a little bit different. Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. I was going to say I love this book. Obviously I love this book if I'm recommending it to you. But I mean, you can see by the amount of corners that I've turned up that I really love this book. I feel like this is for you if you want to immerse yourself in beautiful like scenic writing, if you want gorgeous descriptions of nature, if you are, okay, so you know how late stage capitalism has just made us completely exhausted and just done, okay, and you know how that kind of birthed cottagecore as like a romanticization of like the simple life and being in the country and being away from work and technology and cities and, you know, the daily life that we find ourselves in. If you like cottagecore, I feel like you will like Far from the Madding Crowd. This book was birthed after the Industrial Revolution kind of took off and people were harking back to a golden age of like farming and countryside living, and I think this was actually originally published as a serial, so in kind of like episodes in a literary magazine, and then it was revised to be published as a novel. But yeah, if you are someone who just wants a break from city life and from the monotony of capitalism, then maybe this is good for you. You get to be in the country, you get to be with our protagonist Bathsheba as 3 men fight it out to win her hand in marriage, and for her to, you know, she doesn't really want to get married, she just wants to get on with her life and get on with her farm. I really love Bathsheba as a protagonist, I think she's great. And yeah, there's just some gorgeous writing in here. The instinctive act of humankind was to stand and listen and learn how the trees on the right and the trees on the left wailed or chanted to each other in the regular antiphonies of a cathedral choir, how hedges and other shapes to leeward then caught the note, lowering it to the tenderest sob, and how the hurrying gust then plunged into the south to be heard no more. The sky was clear, remarkably clear, and the twinkling of all the stars seemed to be but throbs of one body timed by a common pulse. Like, the writing about nature is just so gorgeous, and yeah, we have some really interesting characters. So we have Bathsheba, our protagonist, who inherits a farm, and she's just concerned with, you know, keeping her farm going. The other 3 kind of main characters are the men that want to marry her, and they are very different kinds of men. So you have Gabriel Oak, he's a shepherd, and he is just kind of salt of the earth kind of guy. He is such a romantic, he falls easily for Bathsheba. I like Gabriel Oak. The next suitor we have is Sergeant Troy, who is just, okay, if my sister swiped for him on a dating app, I would throw her phone out the window. Like, he is a fuckboy. He is horrible. He basically kind of just wants Bathsheba because she's beautiful and because she has power, and he wants to, you know, use her power for himself. And he kind of, I get the feeling that he just sees women as disposable. But there's a really good scene where they meet on like a night path, and it's so funny because he's obviously like this really not good guy, and he's wearing this like bright red uniform, and it's like, oh, that's a red flag. Like, he is a literal walking red flag, and she's like making the eyes at him because he's so handsome. She can't see past the red flag, she just sees his gorgeous face. And then the final suitor is farmer Boldwood. Now, he makes my skin crawl. The ending to this novel with him is just, yeah. He's very stoic, he keeps to himself. He also has a farm that's near Bathsheba's, and yeah, he I don't really know what to say about him, because I feel like if I say anything it will really give away a couple of the kind of plot devices that makes the narrative take over, so I don't really want to say anything, but he made my skin crawl. But yeah, this has some gorgeous writing. It does romanticize country life, and maybe that's what you need this summer. Maybe you need to get away from the city, and you know what, I wouldn't blame you. I love this book so much. It's probably one of my favorite classics, and yeah, there's actually a really good quote. God, am I going to be able to find it? I know I turned up a lot of pages, but I think it's in, is it in the sheep washing scene? The great barn and the sheep shearers, maybe? Yeah, so this is like the clear romanticization, which I love. I was there for that. Every green was young, every pore was open, and every stalk was swollen with racing currents of juice. God was palpably present in the country, and the devil had gone with the world to town. So good. I love Bathsheba. There's a really good quote from her when people are trying to get her to, people are just trying to get her to explain herself all the time, and she says, I cannot tell you, it is difficult for a woman to define her feelings in language, which is chiefly made by men to express theirs. Brilliant. I love Bathsheba. So yeah, Thomas Hardy, Far from the Madding Crowd, if you want to have a little classic countryside summer. And finally, I felt like I had to add a non-fiction to the list, and so this is like if you want to educate yourself over the summer. Everybody by Olivia Laing. Now, I know I have spoken about this book probably a couple of times in a couple of different videos, because we all know I love Laing, and this is probably my favorite book so far by them. It's really a bunch of essays concerned with the freedom and the constraints placed on bodies, and Laing looks at historical figures to kind of illustrate different aspects and different points in history where battles have been fought for bodies, or human rights have really been protested for, or they've been stamped down, and how important it is to consider bodies that are not like yours. Like, every body is just important, and I feel like these essays are brilliant. So if you want to have a smart girl summer, this is a good book for you. Yeah, there's a lot in here, and I feel like if you have a body, you should read this, because you need to respect your own body and the fights that in the past that got you the rights that your body has, but also you need to learn what other bodies need and what fights are still to come and still need to be fought for them to have their rights too. Brilliant book. I think it just really speaks to how to embody your principles as well, like what it means to live your politics, what it means to live what you think, what you say. I feel like Lang's a really good example of that. I actually went to a talk that they gave about this book, and it was just massively fascinating. I love Lang so much. I will read anything that they write. So these are my summer recommendations for you. I tried to not speak about anything that I'd spoken about too much before on here, so there were some new recommendations. I will not be reading any of these this summer, unfortunately, but currently I'm deciding between these two books. So we have The Master and Margarita by Bulgakov, and then we have East of Eden by John Steinbeck, and honestly, I cannot pick. It is very difficult. Do I want a little bit of Russian surrealism where there's a massive cat, or do I want, realist literature set in California? I feel like they're very different, and I don't know which world I kind of want to submerge myself in this summer. So if you have any opinion on that, please let me know in the comments. If you have any summer reads that you feel like are essential, also please let me know. And yeah, I'll see you next time.